Quick Connections week 3, already 3 weeks into this. And today, Leah Gutman is going to be with First Forward Consulting. We'll be interviewing a very special guest, Dr.Dan Diamond. Dr. Diamond has been on the front lines of disasters around the globe. He was the director of the medical triage unit at the New Orleans Convention Center following Hurricane Katrina. He led one of the first teams into Haiti after their devastating earthquake and deployed to the Philippines following Typhoon Yolanda. Dr. Diamond is a clinical assistant professor at the Elson S. Floyd College of Medicine at WSU, and he's received multiple awards, including the Red Cross Real Hero Award, the Washington State's Governor's Award of Excellence, and President Obama's Volunteer Service Award. He's been seen on CNN, Anderson Cooper, Larry King Live, and most recently you may have seen him on Q13 Fox News. Just this past weekend I saw him. Dr. Diamond has a really unique understanding of how crisis can impact our emotions. So again, I would ask, please be sure to mute your device unless you wish to ask a question, and you can also use the chat box. So Leah, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Awesome. All right. Welcome everybody. And thanks, Robin. And Dan, thank you so much for joining us today. We're so excited to have you here. Did we miss anything in your introduction? Anything you want to tell us real quick before we jump into the questions?
Yeah, my real claim to fame is I used to be a street mime in Seattle.
Seriously?
Yeah, true story. That's how I made my money going through medical school. So it was, and it wasn't a bad gig. You know, it was like 38 years ago. I put my hat out and I would do street mime, and I was making $25 an hour back then.
Wow.
But yeah, now the crowds aren't there, so you can't do it during COVID-19. But it wasn't a bad gig, set my own hours. Worked
Awesome.
at the market and Seattle Center and all that stuff. I had a lot of fun.
Awesome. Very cool. All right. So, man, let's talk about all these like crazy kind of emotions and things that are going on with us right now. So what kind of emotions can people expect to be feeling right now?
Well, I had a rough night last night. And how many of you, I got video for a few of you, how many had a tough night at least one night this week? Hard to get the whole night of sleep in. Yeah, you know, it was about 3 o'clock in the morning and my brain would not turn off. It was solving all kinds of problems and upset about all kinds of stuff. And it just went around and around and around. We call that the monkey mind. When the monkey mind gets going, it's really hard to turn it off. And the way that I've found that works, if that's of interest to you, is to show some self-compassion. And it worked last night. I had one of these nights a couple weeks ago, but last night was really a rough one. And there's 3 parts to this self-compassion. The first part is to acknowledge that you're suffering. And so I sat there and just said, you know, man, you're hurting. You're going through some tough stuff here. This is kind of a tough time for a lot of people, for your family, for people you care about, for your business. And then to show up with kindness instead of being mean to myself, you know, because my natural tendency is to go, come on, Diamond, you're a doctor, you're a disaster doc, buck up. You should be able to handle this. You know better than to do this tossing and turning stuff. What the heck is wrong with you? That's not helpful. That just adds to the monkey mind. But to say, oh man, I'm sorry that you're really having a tough time right now. And if you could have seen the conversation, if it was a thought bubble above my head, it's a little bit mushy, but I said, you know, I love you and I care about you. And I just want you to know I'm here for you, which seems weird to be here for yourself. But having that conversation of I love you and I know you're hurting and you're suffering and it's okay, that's really helpful. And then to realize that this is common to all of us. This is not just something that one of us is struggling with or just a problem with one part of our state. This is a global issue right now. And I know I'm not the only one staying up at night.
Yeah, I mean, and this is so different than any disaster, you know, we've ever experienced, right, in our lifetime.
Yeah, when I deploy, I usually know I can come home and it's going to be safe and everything's fine at home. This one, there's no safe place to hide.
Oh, I think that's a really good point, right? When you really think about it, right, it's everywhere and it's in everybody's lives, right? And question, do you think people are going to experience this emotionally the same way?
Oh, absolutely not. I don't. Right now, I'm fine.
Yeah.
Last night, I was miserable.
Yeah.
And, you know, some people are still putting their head in the sand and saying, well, this isn't any worse than the flu. It is worse than the flu. It's a big deal. It's a tough one. As a doc, I can tell you, this is stay home. Don't go out if you don't have to. But yeah, everybody's going to experience it differently, and everybody's going to experience it differently depending on where they are during that day. So it's going to change, and give yourself space to experience it differently.
Yeah.
I read a book by McHugh that I really liked called The Listening Life. It's a Christian-based book, so if that's not your thing, don't read it. But he talks about how we have the conversation always going on inside. And the conversation is more like a classroom of seventh graders rather than just two voices or one voice. There's a whole classroom of seventh graders. One kid is looking out the window, wondering if they can sneak out the window without getting caught. One kid's going, I wonder if I can whack the person in front of me and then sit back and nobody will know that it was me. One kid's saying, could you be quiet? I'm trying to listen to the teacher. And one kid is in the corner thinking about sex because that's what seventh graders do all the time. And the teacher's saying, eyes up here, eyes up here. There's this cacophony of conversations going on. And so as these different voices show up, be kind to all of them because they're all part of who you are. And if you get nasty, it doesn't help. Just to kind of sit with how we show up, I think is really helpful, and give those different voices time to be able to express themselves is more helpful than saying children should be seen and not heard. Not helpful.
Yeah. And, I think how does that then, right? Because we then have to be kind to ourselves, right? Because we know we're all going to be, in this emotional chaos. But then when you get, say you're confined with people that are in your house, or, right, you're having conversations with other people that everybody is in a different place, right? Emotionally. How do you manage through that and still kind of be able to show that kindness?
Well, I have to start with being kind to myself.
Yeah.
Because if I'm telling myself to shut up and be quiet, it makes it really hard for me to come alongside other people with kindness and curiosity. If I can show up with kindness and curiosity and openness towards myself, then I can do it with you.
Yeah.
And
tell me more about that curiosity, right? Because you said, kindness and curiosity. What does curiosity mean?
So this is like a ninja skill. And if you look at, there's a great quote that was by Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl was an Austrian psychiatrist, was captured by the Nazis, spent 7 years in the concentration camps. And it's important to know that because you can't say stuff like this quote unless you've suffered. And he said, between stimulus and response, there's a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. So the stimulus is going on. My natural tendency is to instantly respond, especially if it's a high stress situation. Because from a neuroscience perspective, the smart part of my brain is the prefrontal cortex. It's right here behind my forehead. I can solve really cool problems with this part of my brain, but it goes offline pretty easily. The next part is the limbic system, which is where we connect and belong and feel connected to other people. At the very core, down at the root of our brain, that the brainstem, is the amygdala. And the amygdala's job is to keep us safe. It's very fast. You're walking down the path and you see a snake and your brain goes, whoa, snake, and you jump back. And then you look at it again and you go, it was a stick. So the amygdala is not very accurate. It reacts instantly, has an opinion about everybody and everything all the time. I don't want to live there. That's the default that I drop down to. And Danny Friedland has written a book called Leading Well from Within. It's a great book for leaders to learn about how do you move from this reactive amygdala up into safety and belonging, and then move up into significance and the ability to solve problems. So knowing that I tend to drop into this instant response, the way out of that, part of that is to realize that what Frankl is saying, that between stimulus and response, there's a space. I want to make that space just a little bit bigger, because in that space, I get to choose how I'm going to respond. So if I'm hanging out with you and you freak out and I respond back by freaking out back at you, that's just an amygdala to an amygdala conversation going on.
Right.
If I can spread that out Like if you're my business partner and you're freaking out and then I freak out because you freak out, it's not helpful. If I can spread that out, I can go, how can I best serve Leah right here, right now?
How do you spread that out? What kind of
Yeah.
strategies can you recommend to help us spread, do that?
First, realizing that I'm not my emotions.
Hmm.
So the question you asked was, where does curiosity come in? There's a huge difference when it comes to how I process my emotions between I'm angry or I'm feeling angry. I am not angry. I'm Dan, and I'm in there somewhere. Um, I'm feeling angry. That gives me the ability to pull back from the situation and look at myself and go, dude, you're feeling angry right now. I wonder why you're feeling angry. What set you off? And is it a reasonable anger? There are sometimes you should be reasonably angry. There's sometimes you should be reasonably afraid. I mean, fear is a good thing if it reminds you to wash your hands and put a mask on when you go out in public. Fear is not helpful if you're trying to deal with your business partners or your employees and you're all freaked out and you can't think and your prefrontal cortex is offline. Then I want to go, pull back and go, that's kind of curious. I wonder why you're afraid right now. What is it? Has this tickled something in you that's made you really afraid? Is there another issue that's going on? But to show up with this kindness, openness, and curiosity is a much more helpful way to show up, and it broadens that gap between the stimulus and response and gives us the ability to respond differently. We do get to choose how we're going to respond.
Yeah, so it sounds like a lot of this is a little bit kind of foundational to that concept like of emotional intelligence, right? And that whole, you have to be able to, recognize and be okay, right, with your own emotions before then you can move it up, right, to extend that courtesy and that grace to the people around you.
Yeah, and I think sometimes people will dismiss emotional intelligence as being too woo-woo.
Yeah.
I'm a disaster doc. When I wrote my book, it's Beyond Resilience, Trench-Tested Tools to Thrive Under Pressure, because this is the stuff that I process when I'm in a disaster. When I'm in a high pressure or high stakes environment, I want to make sure I'm not going from stimulus directly to response, but I'm considering how can I best serve the people that are around me? How can I back up and become aware of the emotions that I'm experiencing, and with curiosity and kindness go, does that best serve the people I'm with right now? Does it best serve me? I get to choose how I'm going to respond. Maybe I'll choose a different response in this case and show up and ask better questions.
Yeah, and I think you're right, because I think a lot of us, right, the instinct is we don't want to acknowledge some of those kind of negative emotions and then, dive into really where they're coming from, because sometimes then we feel like it doesn't put us in the best light. But, like you said, just knowing and being, and know that it's okay and it's natural, and we all feel those emotions for a variety of different reasons.
Yeah. And to be kind, because if you're not kind to yourself, then you're not going to listen.
Yeah.
You're not going to go, oh man, I'm really feeling upset right now.
Right.
You're just going to go, oh, shut up, man. I'm trying to be an adult.
You mentioned something when we talked a few days ago. You mentioned something about watching the news and as far as that gathering of information. What advice would you give us as far as, how much information, should you gather, and, how much often do you inundate yourself with, everything that's going on with, around you with the different, information outlets that we have?
Yeah, I just got to the point last week where I had to take a news sabbatical. And I don't know if I made that word up, but it seemed like a good one. I instead of watching the news, I replaced it with good stuff. So
Like what?
I've been doing some reading and some writing and playing guitar and listening to great music and stuff, just things to nourish my soul. Going out for a walk, eating fudgesicles. Did I say that? I'm a doctor. I'm not supposed to say that. But just something that's pleasurable and not watching the news. I mean, I can tell you what the news is going to say the rest of the week. Okay. I'll just let you know. They're going to fight back and forth politically. One party's going to say stuff, the other party's going to disagree, and one news channel is going to try to make one side look like an idiot. The other news channel is going to make the other side look like an idiot. We're going to see more deaths. Our numbers are flattening in Washington State. We've done an outstanding job of flattening the curve, but we're still going to lose some more people. We're starting to do more community testing. Testing is becoming more available, and there you have it. That's kind of what the news is going to be for the rest of the week. I just saved you. You don't have to sit there and watch it over and over and over again.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, check back in and, maybe watch the news on Monday or something to see if I missed anything. But I don't think I missed anything. That's kind of what it's been. I think it's reasonable to look at the CDC and see if they've come up with any new guidelines. Frankly, I don't see anything that's going to be urgent between now and Monday.
Awesome. So getting kind of this whole, disaster thing, and when you look at this crisis compared to some of the others that you've experienced firsthand, what different fears do you have, and what different concerns do you have?
Well, so far I try to always, when I get deployed, after I come back, I try to put a word on the disaster. So Katrina was bizarre. I mean, I saw the weirdest stuff in Katrina. Like, just as an example, we're in the middle of this triage unit. There's helicopters landing and taking off and blowing our stuff all over the place. I'm being protected by the 82nd Airborne with their machine guns. So I got these dudes all around walking around. I've got guys with big radio equipment, backpacks, and huge long antennas and stuff. It's a war zone, crazy. And one of my staff comes up and says, "Hey, Diamond, this lady over there says she can swallow a snake." Like, really? So I went over to her and I said, "Hey, I understand you can swallow a snake." And she says, like this, "I sure can." I'm like, "Oh, that's just nasty. Do you have one?" She goes, "I sure do." And she reaches into her purse, pulls out a live stinking snake, 2 inches in diameter and about 3 feet long, and swallows it and pulls it out and swallows it again. Not making it up. I can show you the pictures and prove it. You don't see that every day in Seattle. And, there was all kinds of bizarre, weird stuff that happened in Katrina. Katrina had the sense of Mad Max in the Thunderdome. So we had people shooting at the relief workers. You could drive as fast as you wanted to down the freeway, like 120 miles an hour. Down either side of the freeway, by the way, you could drive on the off-ramps and on the off-ramps. It was so bizarre. Haiti was devastating. I came home from Haiti and I cried for 3 or 4 months afterwards. I saw stuff that I cannot get out of my head, and I'll never be able to get out of my head. My best buddy that goes on disasters with me won't go anymore after Haiti because he has pretty bad PTSD from it. The Philippines had to have 2 words: tender mercy, because I felt like I had been loved by a culture. So their culture is really, really cool. Before the storm even stops blowing, they go to their neighbor's house and say, "Hey, are you okay? Is your family okay? We're cooking some rice. Why don't you come over and we'll figure out whose house we're going to build first." Most of the disasters I get deployed to, it's all about me. In the Philippines, it's all about we. How are we going to get through this? And if you go on my website, dandiamondmd.com, and go to the media tab, and you can watch the video that I shot from a helicopter during the disaster, and then go search for a video on YouTube that is called Tacloban, the happiest people in the world. They have rebuilt, and it's better now than it ever was before, and it's only 6 years later. So it's just like, how in the world did you do that? They did it by we instead of me. And the other thing that they did is they focused on where they wanted to go rather on the problems. Mm-hmm. So they had this vision of where do you want to go, which is another really important thing. And I try to do this all the time with my teams when we get deployed, is instead of focusing on the disaster and the problems, I focus on where I want to end up. And
that's great advice, right?
Yeah.
What's your word for this disaster?
I think so far, I think kindness, which is, I'm so glad we're not doing the Mad Max and the Thunderdome thing. And I'm hoping that we can keep this kindness going. But I'm seeing people that are showing up with, what can I do to help my neighbors? And it's happening all over the world. There's people that are just kind and showing up and taking care of each other, and reaching out on Zoom calls to their friends they haven't talked to for years and having some great conversations. I mean, there's just some really kind stuff that's happening. I'm not talking about the politicians. They haven't figured this out, but those of us that are like normal people, um, we're being kind to each other, and I think it's beautiful.
Yeah, that's awesome. What other advice do you have as far as people that are feeling really isolated right now, either in their home or their apartment by themselves, or with, you know, a partner and potential small children? I mean, how do you, any advice on how to cope kind of with those kind of issues and emotions going on?
Yeah, I got it. When I'm feeling isolated, it's usually when I'm focused inward and all the arrows are going in, and I feel connected when the arrows are focused out. So I found these things, and I just want to show you what they are. And if you're not on your phone, you're just going to have to use your imagination. These are things that I found. These are stamps, and somebody said you could put these on an envelope and write a letter to somebody and put their address on it, put it in the mailbox, and the mailman will actually take it and deliver it. It's the coolest thing. I don't know. It's not like email, but you could write cards to people. And oh, sweet, Dan, you've got some too. That's awesome. Yeah. So you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. I mean, we can write cards to people. You can jump on Zoom. You can use Zoom for free for conversations up to 40 minutes. And it's not that hard. There's videos online on how to use Zoom. You could use the old-fashioned telephone. I think Zoom is really cool. And one of the things that I figured out last week about Zoom, because I'm becoming a Zoom ninja. This is where I live now. Here's my ninja secret. When you're on the phone, you have to keep talking to fill the silence, or the people you're talking to are going to go, "Are you still there? Are you there? Are you there? Hello? Hello? Oh." But in Zoom, you can stop talking and still see the other person. And I had a really powerful conversation with somebody that I'm coaching that is involved in the emergency management world. And I said, you know, I have something that I want to tell you, but I don't have any words for it. So I'm just going to be quiet for a minute and speak to you non-verbally for a moment. Now, all of you that are on the phone are going, "Are you there? Are you there? Are you there?" It was a really powerful connection moment. So I think you try that with your family that are not in the room with you. Well, you could do it in the room easy. Just quit talking and go sit by them. But try it over Zoom. It's really powerful. Look them right in the eye. Look right at the camera and connect.
Yeah.
There's another ninja thing about Zoom. Everybody tends to look at the pictures of the other people. Just look at the camera when you want to really connect with somebody, because they'll feel the eye-to-eye contact. There's a difference between when I'm looking at you like this versus when I'm looking down at Brandon with his cool background. It looks like his head's not connected to his body. It's really cool. So eye contact is important. Zoom is a great way to connect with people. I connected with my buddy that's in Spain. I connected with my old German exchange student, and she gave me a tour of her house. There's, you know, connect with people, reach out.
Yeah.
Don't wait for them to call you. The Friends Anonymous is not going to stop by and knock on your door and say, "Hey, we're from Friends Anonymous. We heard you're lonely." You're going to have to take the initiative
Exactly. Yeah.
to reach out.
So as we continue this for the next few minutes, right, does anybody out there have any questions? Please type them in the chat box and we'll make sure that we address those now. I know Michelle posted that, you know, she reaches out to lots of her friends and family that are in different states and has conversations kind of about the same emotions, but definitely from a different perspective, right? Because I think geographically, we're having a different experience.
Yeah. You know, I learned this, and I'm 62 now. And I wish I would have learned this when I was like 12, but it's taken me a while. It's just in the last couple of years, I've learned the power of proximity, to come alongside people that are different than me and and again, showing up with kindness and curiosity and openness, and say, what does it look like from your perspective? I know what this disaster looks like from a 62-year-old white guy that grew up in Tacoma. I mean, I know what that looks like. What I don't know what it looks like is, what does it look like to be Leah, what's it like to be a woman? What's a woman's perspective on this? If you want to see in 3D, you need to have two eyes. And when God built your face, he stuck your eyes right next to each other. He didn't put them on your fingers. He put them proximate, but it gives us this ability to see in 3D and to have depth perception. So if you want to understand this whole disaster thing differently, find somebody that's different than you are, that's a friend, and say, can I ask you some questions? I'm just curious. What's it like to be an African-American and a woman and face this disaster? What does it look like? Because I suspect it looks differently than it does to this old white guy. And it's okay to do that if you show up with kindness and you're respecting them. If they say, well, it looks like this, and you go, well, that's a bunch of crap, I don't think that's true at all, that's not openness, that's not kindness. But if we honor each other and say, would you help me to see this differently, because all I can see is my perspective, and I'm curious and I want to know more.
Yeah, and I like to say people have this inherent need to be understood.
Yeah.
And I think, right, this kind of goes along with that. And if we give people that, and if we are genuine about that and wanting to understand, that's a little bit of magic right there.
Yeah, it really is. I've had some amazing conversations with people when I sat down with them and said, can I ask you some questions? And they said, oh yeah, for sure you can ask.
Yeah.
I've had some funny conversations that I would tell you if everybody was joining us and we could see each other, but I'm not doing it with all the lurker people that are just calling in on the phone because it's too wild of a story.
Dr. Dan, when we were talking last week as well, you mentioned a tool that I thought was pretty valuable as far as, I think, journaling. I don't know if you recall, you'd read a book or something to do with just the way to get some of your emotions out was very helpful.
Yeah. This is an incredibly powerful thing. It's a book called The Artist Way, and it's a technique called daily pages. And I don't do it all the time, but when I need to do it, it's really helpful. And there are people that do it every single day, and I think it would be valuable if I would discipline myself to do it. But the way you do it is you sit down and you write for 3 pages. And however long it takes you, if you don't want to spend much time, write fast. but 3 pages of writing, and you don't have an agenda, you just sit down and start writing. And when you first start out, it's like, well, what in the world would I write about? Well, you might write about what in the world, what am I going to write about? I don't know what to write about. There's nothing I would write about. I'm not a writer, and I'm just writing all this out. And then the monkey mind goes, yeah, and it was really hard to sleep last night. Why was it hard to sleep last night? Yeah, it was hard to sleep because you were worrying about this and this and this. Well, how realistic is that? And you just start, stream of consciousness writing. Because I think what happens is sometimes the voice will get in a loop. Like, I don't know if everybody on the call is old enough to remember vinyl records, but sometimes they would skip and they would just play the same thing over and over and over again. You kind of had to bump the record player to get it to continue to play. And my brain does that. I'll get stuck on something and it just goes around and around and around. What am I going to do about this? What am I going to do about this? When you sit down and write it and get it out, then your brain goes, okay, you heard me. Now I can go on to something else. So yeah, it's really helpful. Another thing that has been exceedingly helpful for me is an app called the 5-Minute Journal. And it's a gratitude app. You can post a picture in it every day, and it asks you 3 things you're grateful for, 3 things you're going to do today, and then an affirmation statement, like I am fill in the blank.
Yeah.
And you don't write I am a knucklehead. You write down I am faithful. I am enthusiastic. Whatever, something that's encouraging for you.
Nice.
I'm hopeful.
Hey, we have one last question, if we
Yep.
can. I think this is a really important question. If you could quickly answer this, because we're kind of getting down to our time limit. But it says, if you have an employee sitting at home on unemployment, how do you manage the conversation between hope and the reality of not knowing if or when their job will come back?
I'd say honest conversations. This is a time for transparency.
Yeah.
Not sugarcoating it, but to reach out and say, I don't know if this is going to work, but I do care about you and care about you as a human. And I'll do everything I can to help keep your job and figure out ways that we can make this work. We're struggling. I welcome your perspective and your ideas. It's a book that's worth reading is a book called Conversations Worth Having by Jackie Stavros, Stavros. And she's got an example in there of one time when she was called in to be a consultant for a company that was being shut down. And she went in and said, well, would it be okay, since you're going to shut down in 5 months anyway, can we have a conversation about what might we possibly be able to do to stay in business? Can we have that conversation? And the employees all rallied together and came up with some solutions, and the company is still in business. They're going to shut this whole factory down. But her book gets into some specifics about how you shift the conversation. And frankly, this is a tough one. This is going to be a long haul thing, and people are going to lose their jobs. But we want to treat each other with kindness and with honesty. And at the same time, if I had a bunch of people working for me, I would be picking their brains about, do you have any ideas? And how can we put this together? And Jackie, and with a specific framework, and Jackie gets into that framework of how to do that using a strategy called appreciative inquiry.
Awesome. So it sounds like, I totally so appreciate you coming on with us today, Dan. And like you said, that word kindness, right? And if we can just remember that every single day, be kind to ourselves and be kind to each other. To try to keep on track time-wise, Robin, do you have any last things to wrap us up here today?
Yes, thank you, Leah. Thank you, Dr. Diamond. It really was wonderful having you. I wish we had more time. Please do email mcaww@mcaww.net with any topic suggestions for future weeks. And if you didn't see the e-news today from MCAWW, we are doing a photo contest to send us your best work from home photos. And we will also be scheduling a virtual Toastmasters for the first time on April 28th, so don't miss that.
Nice.
Again, thank you, Dr. Diamond. Thank you, everybody, for participating. Take good care and do contact us with any questions or comments. All right. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.